6 months ago, this border was tense but quiet. Today, one of the most decorated military units on Earth is fighting underground in corridors where their billion-dollar weapons are completely useless. Stay with me, because what happened beneath the soil of southern Lebanon is not just a military story. It is a warning signal the entire world just received simultaneously. Before March 2, 2026, most people had never heard of Bint Jbeil. That changes today. Picture southern Lebanon in January of this year. A ceasefire was technically holding. Israel was conducting sporadic airstrikes, Hezbollah was absorbing pressure, and satellite imagery showed no unusual surface activity. Western analysts were describing Hezbollah as degraded, depleted, and strategically weakened after the 2024 invasion. That was the before. That assessment was catastrophically wrong. Now picture May 2026. The Lebanese Ministry of Public Health has confirmed over 2,700 people killed since March 2nd alone. More than 1 million Lebanese civilians, over 20% of the country's entire population, have been displaced. Hezbollah has launched 1,121 documented waves of attacks toward Israeli territory, 70% rockets, 29% explosive drones. And Israel's most elite ground unit, the Golani Brigade, founded 78 years ago and ranked globally alongside Britain's SAS, is fighting room by room in tunnel networks that reach 25 meters underground. How did we get from that quiet January to this? Something that almost no Western media outlet explained correctly. The ceasefire period between late 2024 and February 2026 was not a pause in Hezbollah's preparation. It was the preparation itself. Every day of the truce, supply convoys crossed the Syrian border loaded with Iranian-manufactured anti-tank missiles. Every week, new fighters completed accelerated training in subterranean combat techniques. Every month, engineers reinforced tunnel sections and excavated new lateral routes. The IDF's own 7th Armored Brigade Colonel Shaul Yisraeli confirmed in an interview with the Jerusalem Post this week that when Israeli forces entered Lebanon in March 2026, they found the enemy had, quote, re-established itself after the 2024 operation. That single admission is enormous. Subscribe to Verified Bulletin right now if you want analysis that actually explains what mainstream channels skip over. Now here is the turning point that changed everything. February 2026. The United States and Israel launched a coordinated military campaign against Iranian nuclear and military infrastructure. In one of the most audacious operations in decades, Israeli intelligence eliminated Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. The calculation in Washington and Tel Aviv was that decapitating the leadership would paralyze Iran's regional proxy network. That calculation reversed instantly. Hezbollah activated not in panic, but in precision. What had been sporadic rocket exchanges became sustained multi-target bombardment across northern Israel. Simultaneously, Iran submitted a formal compensation demand of $270 billion, addressed to both Israel and the United States, citing destroyed refineries, damaged ports, and erased civilian infrastructure. That figure represents more than half of Iran's entire annual GDP. This was not theater. It was a coordinated economic strike fired at the exact moment the military trap underground was being triggered. Two battlefields, same clock, no coincidence. Israel responded with the doctrine that had won every previous war, Operation Second Shield. 5 full divisions activated, Golani Brigade designated as the offensive spearhead into Lebanese territory. The strategic logic was sound on paper: superior air power, superior armor, superior intelligence, superior training. These factors had always been decisive in every previous conflict in this region. But here is what nobody in the Israeli command structure had fully modeled. What was waiting underground had not been built to fight that doctrine. It had been built specifically to make that doctrine irrelevant. Hezbollah's tunnel network beneath southern Lebanon was not a series of simple escape routes. IDF sources confirmed the existence of a dual-system underground infrastructure around Kantara, approximately 11 kilometers inside Lebanese territory, which Israeli commanders codenamed Acre in the north and Arad in the south. This was an underground city, operational command centers, pre-positioned weapons depots, field medical stations, redundant communication lines, and critically, entry points concealed inside ordinary civilian structures that had operated on the surface for years without triggering a single intelligence alert. Think about that. 2 decades of construction, 0 detectable surface signatures significant enough to act on. Drop a like right now if you want more verified military analysis like this on Verified Bulletin. The Golani Brigade descended into those corridors carrying the confidence of 78 years of unbroken victories. These were not conscripts, highly selected, intensively trained combatants, tested in Gaza, tested in Lebanon 2006, tested in every urban warfare environment Israel had encountered. But at 25 meters underground, something fundamental changed. The F-35s overflying at 30,000 feet became irrelevant. Precision-guided munitions costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each found no targets reachable. Merkava Mark IV tanks, $4 million per unit, and considered among the finest armored vehicles ever manufactured, found themselves in passages where the engagement range was measured in meters, not kilometers. Air superiority, gone. Armor advantage, gone. Electronic intelligence, degraded by dense underground environment. Satellite communications, disrupted. Everything that Western military spending had optimized for the last 50 years simply ceased to function below ground. And waiting in the dark was Hezbollah's Radwan force. These were not militia fighters operating on instinct. Veterans of the Syrian war, directly trained by Iranian Revolutionary Guard officers with multi-theater operational experience, who had memorized every junction and pre-planned every kill zone in the system they had built with their own hands. Commanders reported ambushes emerging from vertical shafts and lateral passages appearing on no available intelligence map. Crossfire from multiple angles simultaneously. Darkness, dust, distorted acoustic signatures from explosions in confined spaces, creating disorientation that no conventional training program can fully replicate. The 2006 Lebanon War lasted 34 days and cost Israel 121 soldiers across the entire conflict. What has been happening in the hills of southern Lebanon since March 2026 represents a pace of attrition that military analysts are comparing in classified assessments to nothing in this region's modern history. As of this week, IDF confirmed casualties are already in double digits just from the Golani Brigade alone, with drone strikes wounding 12 soldiers in a single incident near Shomeira, and Hezbollah targeting Golani forces in Deir Syrian and Zautar as recently as May 4th with artillery barrages, rocket attacks, and machine gun engagements. The ground battle in that sector is still ongoing as of recording this. Here is something the mainstream conversation is missing entirely. Israel's intelligence estimate going into this operation placed Hezbollah's combat strength in the southern sector at between 6,000 and 7,000 fighters. Revised estimates during active fighting moved that number to between 18,000 and 25,000 prepared combatants. That is not a rounding error. That is 3 times the original figure. Every satellite pass, every signals intercept, every informant network had failed to capture the true scale of what had been assembled underground over 2 decades with extraordinary operational security discipline. Comment below. Do you think Western intelligence agencies genuinely underestimated this, or was the political will to act on those estimates simply missing? Be honest, because I read every comment. Now, what does the after look like? What has actually changed since that underground confrontation began? Brent crude oil jumped $17 per barrel in the 48 hours after information about Israeli losses began circulating in trading rooms. Maritime insurance premiums for cargo ships transiting eastern Mediterranean waters, according to Lloyd's of London data, tripled within a single week. The eastern Mediterranean routes carry 15% of global trade. Multinational corporations are quietly revising expansion plans in Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. Supply chains connecting Asia to Europe through Suez now carry risk calculations that simply did not exist 6 months ago. What happened underground in southern Lebanon is already moving decisions being made in Shanghai boardrooms, Frankfurt banks, and New York trading floors. This is not a regional conflict anymore, it is a global economic variable. And then there is the strategic signal being received in other capitals. North Korea is studying every leaked operational detail from Bint Jbeil. Its tunnel networks beneath the Korean demilitarized zone run for hundreds of kilometers. Beijing is watching the performance data on Western fifth-generation weapons against subterranean adversaries with the Taiwan scenario in its calculations. Iran has achieved a proof of concept that no amount of American press releases can undo. If you design your military architecture underground and you invest 2 decades of patience instead of 2 decades of technology purchases, you can bring the performance gap between the world's most advanced military and a non-state actor down to near zero inside a tunnel. This is the paradigm that is now being absorbed simultaneously across a dozen capitals Washington considers adversarial. The $270 billion Iranian compensation demand adds the second pressure layer on top of the military attrition. Iran does not need that money deposited tomorrow. The demand establishes a legal and diplomatic precedent for future conflicts, signals to the international community that military operations against Iranian infrastructure carry a documented economic liability, and offers Washington a negotiated off-ramp while simultaneously raising the cost of the current trajectory. It is dual pressure, military and economic, applied with the strategic patience of an organization that measures time in decades rather than election cycles. There is a reason the Israeli government went silent for hours after the scale of losses underground became clear inside the military command. And in the language of hard power, that quality of silence communicates something that no press conference can walk back. Here is the hard truth that this conflict has exposed. Absolute air superiority, the foundational principle of American military power since World War II, has a ceiling. It ends at the surface of the Earth. Fifth-generation weapon systems valued at hundreds of millions per unit have no role in a tunnel 3 meters wide and 25 meters deep. The Golani Brigade did not walk into a poorly defended position. They walked into 20 years of patient engineering designed with one singular purpose: to close the technological gap to zero at the moment of contact. And that lesson is not staying in Lebanon. It is already being studied, modeled, and applied globally. If this conflict ends today, the afterworld is fundamentally different from the before world of January 2026. Military doctrine in Western academies is being rewritten right now. Financial markets have permanently repriced regional stability across the Levant. Washington faces strategic questions about deterrence credibility in the Pacific that do not have clean answers. And the ground under southern Lebanon spoke loudly enough for every government on earth to hear. This is not over. Developments are moving fast. IDF forces made multiple attempts to break through Hezbollah's defenses in 3 sectors as recently as May 8, 2026, just hours before this went live. Fighting continues around Zoutar, al-Mansouri, and Rishafah. The ceasefire with Iran does not apply to Lebanon, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has confirmed that position publicly. Subscribe to Verified Bulletin right now. Turn on every notification, because this story is accelerating, not slowing down, and you will not get the verified analysis anywhere else that this channel provides. Share this video with one person who needs to understand what is actually happening. And drop your question below. What do you think Washington's next move looks like? I want to read your answer.